after we completed our secondary school education, we had three choices: science, arts, and commerce. And in science also, we have two choices: whether to take mathematics or biology. So, as we all are engineers, we thought that biology would be a little boring. We would have to memorize so much weird names of biology. So, it would be better for us to take mathematics and do engineering, right? So, but we have a person among us that didn't take the usual way that we took, as Robert Frost will put it, the road not taken. So, our today's speaker, Dr. Venkatraman Sadanand, is an alumnus of IIT Madras, and then he got PhD in economics from the prestigious Caltech University. And no one of us would ever imagine that he actually did completed his MD from University of Toronto, and then specialized in pediatric neurosurgery. He is now a professor at Loma Linda University, and he's also an CEO and CO at House Calls Now Incorporation and Society for Brain Mapping and Therapeutics. He also visits India 3-4 times a year to serve our community, like in Ahmedabad, Pune, Mumbai, to serve patients for free and do their surgeries for free. And that is a very commendable work of you, sir. So this journey inspired us, and I read this article on Times of India, and I got so inspired that I have to ask him for the talk. And he humbly accepted my request. And although in US there is 5:30 in the morning right now, he accepted our request, and he's now among us. So we welcome you, sir. And without any further ado, we would like to hear from yourself.
Thank you so much, Rushiraj. I am really grateful to you and the CEV team for giving me this opportunity to meet all of you. And especially Surat, which is Hu Andarti Andar to Gujarati Chu. So Surat is not far away from where I grew up. And it's really wonderful. So feel free to stop me when I'm talking, ask any questions. This meeting is for you. So I'm at your disposal. So I went to school. I was born in Madras, which now is Chennai. And then my parents moved to Gujarat. So I grew up a bit in Rajkot, went to grade school from 1 to 4. Elementary school was there in St. Mary's School. And then went to Ahmedabad and lived there for some time and finished up to high school in St. Xavier's School in Ahmedabad, in Navarampura. Then went to St. Xavier's College. We used to have, I don't know if, no, it's probably not there now because you have 10 plus 2, but we used to have this thing called pre-science. So you finish 11th grade, SSC, we called it, secondary school certificate. And then we do a year of pre-science, and that's where you sort of think, should I take pre-science or pre-arts, or you have to make a choice. And pre-science consists of two groups of people. One group that looks down at the other group, and the other group that looks down at the first group. Because there is the biology group and the mathematics group, as you correctly said. And they don't like each other. And but our college, which was St. Xavier's College, also in Navarampura in Ahmedabad, we were a friendly group. And so after that, we had to decide what career path to take. And I myself, at that time, I was not sure where exactly I'm headed. So you do everything. You take all the entrance exams. So I took the IIT entrance exam. I applied for, I had a state rank in Gujarat. So it was, I think the top 10 ranks, you get automatic admission to the medical school. So I applied, paid my deposit in medical school. So no risk, right? You do everything. And my passion was physics. And so we used to have a national exam at that time called National Science Talent Exam. I'm not sure, Rishi, if it's still there, but that exam, you do you have to write a little project, and it was really a wonderful exam because they grade you on the project, and they give you to take home a bunch of challenging questions, extremely challenging questions. And they, in fact, tell you, you go home, you talk to whoever you want, and let's see how far you can go with these answers. So they're not easy questions, mostly mathematics and physics questions. And then there is an interview, quite an exhaustive interview. So went through all that, and my goal was physics, and I wanted to study physics in New Delhi. So having done all that, and I'm a very traditional Indian, in an Indian family, and we listen to our parents. And my father was a mathematician, and he said, it's going to be difficult to earn a living and have your freedom to do the things you like as a academic professor. So he wanted me to go and do engineering. Now, why not medicine? Because one of my first cousin, who we all admired very much, he went to IIT Madras. He's so we had a 5-year program. So he's about 10 or 11 years senior to me. So then I went to IIT Madras, and the influence of parents is remarkable. You admire them. They are your role models, and it's mutual for parents too. They are quite involved with their children's education, and this bond is critical in giving you confidence in what you can do. So I think my first step in this journey was to build that relationship with my parents and build that confidence. So my father was very involved in my education, and my mother was very supportive of what I do. And I had 2 siblings, a brother and a sister, and they were all. My father, even before going to exams, would fill ink in. We had fountain pens, so fill ink in the pen and make sure that I go to the exam. And he'll always remind me, double check your answers. Don't just even if you have time at the end, go back to the first answer and check it again, and so on. So very involved. And it was good to feel that whatever decision is made for my best interest. And there is a second aspect of this. My mother is very spiritual and very, both of my parents passed away now, but that gave me a lot of insight into relying on someone you trust. We grow up in India. We don't ask. We ask a little bit of questions to our parents, but we don't challenge them. And we grew up like that at that time, and so we leave our lives in their hands, and we trust that whatever they advise is for our best interests. And so, in school and college, when you're making these career choices, obviously your peers and your colleagues and classmates are very important. So we all meet often and say, hey, what do we do? Then, of course, one standard answer is, well, my dad wants me to do this, or mom wants me to do this. So everybody understands that part. So we don't want to discuss that. That's how we looked at it. So why are you wanting this thing more than that your parents want it? What drives you to do this? And so it makes you think. And I was very fortunate not only to be born in a family with parents like that, but also to have good friends. And that's important because these are the people who are your influencers. So there's like the YouTube influencers. In those days, the influencers are your peers, your classmates, and your your family. So the classmates, we talked about various career choices. And as you correctly said, Rushiraj, it boiled down to, do you have an interest in biology and related subjects, or do you have an interest in mathematics and related subjects? So, our classmate group split, but we respected each other, and we're still extremely good friends. And that's one of the reasons I visit Ahmedabad often. But now it's not for surgeries. I just come there to meet my friends and enjoy some nice mangoes. But these choices that we make, often we think that they are permanent, and we feel that there is no exit at the end of these choices, that it's a path you've chosen. And it's amazing you mentioned Robert Frost, because I thought about that this morning, or for you this afternoon, about Robert Frost. And of the two paths, he chose the path that is tread less often. And in life, it's similar, that the path that leads you to your goals that you would be happy with is often strewn with obstacles and problems. There are thorns in that path. But if you can show me a path which does not have thorns and that will give you some peace and happiness at the end, I will be surprised. So there is a reason why a path is less trodden and another path is more traveled, and that's because the traveled path is a bit easier. And it is possible you can be happy at the end of it, and it is possible that you may not be happy at the end of the path with thorns. But my feeling has always been, and the experience has been, that when you meet obstacles, how you deal with those obstacles is what changes you. And you could see an obstacle and walk away. You could see an obstacle and try to surmount it and fail. Or you can see an obstacle, try to surmount it and do well. Go past that obstacle and go to the next one. It never stops. Even with exams, I remember, after my, so you have these board exams. So at pre-science in Xavier's College, we had a board exam. We finished the statewide exam, so we finished that. And then I said, okay, this entrance exam I'm writing for engineering, IIT entrance exam. And after this JEE, there's just some classes. I'm done with it after 5 years. Our engineering program was 5 years. And so at the end of 5 years, I finished that exam and I thought, yes, this is it. No more exams in my life. No, now it's just, mauj maja. So wrong, totally wrong, because these exams don't stop. They keep going and going. In fact, even when you finish everything and you're working, you will meet obstacles, you will meet problems. So how you deal and find solutions determines who you are in any field. In the field of research, it's the same thing. You, in fact, search for obstacles, you search for problems. You find a problem, and then you think about how to resolve it. And that's what makes you a good researcher. You may fail and fall 100 times, but how you get up and move forward is what defines you. And I can think of no path to happiness that doesn't involve falling down, that doesn't involve failures. But in the end, you will be happy. So what is it that makes you choose a certain path? If there's two paths, okay, Robert Frost had it easy. But if you have 5 different paths, what do you do, right? And I think that there has to be something in you that drives you to pick a path. Yes, the path that is less trodden is one of the criteria, but there is another criterion. And that is very critical. One of my, when I was at Caltech, one of my physics, I took courses in physics as well, because obviously my background in engineering and my passion was still there. And one of my professors, his name was Richard Feynman, he would always insist that you should only study and do things that can give you answers to what you're curious about. So curiosity was the driving force that was very important for him. You don't do something just because it's needed or it needs to be done or somebody asks you to do something. It should be because you're curious about it. Why does this happen? In fact, in his life, he sat down, and when he went to physics class, he would say, so these are the laws of gravity. Why? How on earth did Newton derive this? And he would derive it from first principles. He would derive laws from, in fact, everything that he ultimately used and studied, he derived from first principles. Because he was curious, how could this happen? But in that process, he developed a certain capacity in him, a capacity to understand the thinking of minds, other minds, and how failure can happen. Because when you derive something from first principles, you can fail many times. But you can also continue and pass and finally find a solution. And this is what he would do. But in the process, he trained his mind to think of problems in a different way. He would say, he loved languages, and he would say, I would think of a problem in physics as a problem with languages. And so his thinking was really phenomenal. And he would say, I see this, in fact, one of the things he told me about Schrodinger's equation was, here's this orange, and you peel this orange. And as you peel in a certain order, you will see the inside part of the orange. And then there are these seeds in it. And so you peel it. And finally, he says something in the orange world that is true. You follow the analogy, and it is true in the physics world. So how you find your happiness is your education. Now, why is this important? Because I'm going to tell you about three adages, three things, statements that are really important. So being curious about something and following it is critical, and it serves a purpose. And the purpose it serves is to keep you engaged, keep your mind engaged, and to find solutions to problems because you're curious, because you want it. And that drives you. And it is the drive that endures you through failures, because endurance is what makes you go. Failures will happen, that's inevitable. But inevitability should not make you retreat. Inevitability is to be anticipated, not retreated from. And when you anticipate it and you get over it, you find that, yes, I learned something from this, or I didn't learn something from it. So this is what Feynman would do. So he would think of these things in various ways. In fact, he taught himself quantum mechanics completely on his own, first principles again, and rediscovered a lot of it in his own shorthand, and he made it easier for him, like the orange analogy, another way to do it. He would draw these little pictures, and believe it or not, the Feynman diagrams and the things he discovered thereafter is what gave him the Nobel Prize in physics. So these are people who want to find answers, but want to find it because they're driven by curiosity. And they find unique ways because they enjoy it. So exams and passing exams, yes, it is there. It's important. But if you are not feeding your mind, then you're losing something. You're losing a part of you. So that's in fact, the first class in quantum mechanics I took from him, walked into the class, And he looked at all of us, big auditorium, because we were all sitting in a little like a movie theater going up. And he looked at us and he said, Hehili Bibkanov Ninamak. I'm thinking, what is he talking about? All of us are thinking. It turns out it's the entire periodic table. And it sounded like something in Russian he's saying to us. But, you know, He, hydrogen, helium, lithium, so on. So he finds ways by which you can do things, alternate ways. Now, why is this important? At that time, I didn't realize why it was important, but I admired him. And so I thought, okay, curiosity is an important tool that we should have in our pockets. But I realize now that there is something very important in us. Our brains have a characteristic, and it's called plasticity. Plasticity is when we are able to make connections. There are, you know, each cell in the brain, each neuron has, imagine a fish with a tail and little sprouts coming with it. Or in these days, I can think of a coronavirus with a tail. So, you know, there are all these little connections, these spikes, and they're called dendrites, and they're little branches that come out. And these branches connect with other neurons. And that's how they communicate, neuron to neuron. Those connections are plastic. That means they can change. They can change with your experiences, with what you learn, with what you know, how you learn, right? So all these things affect the plasticity of your brain. So curiosity, when that drives knowledge, then that knowledge remains with you. And one of the three, I mentioned three sayings or adages, but one of them is to remember always that education is not to make a living. Education is for life. It will be with you, and it should be with you for the rest of your life. It should mold you and change you in a way that makes you go farther and farther in your goals in life. Education cannot end. My dream of finishing my exams when I finished BTech is a false dream. It's just a dream, because these will continue. The exams will continue. So what is it that I can have that will make me go farther later on in life? If I view life as a series of exams, that is not going to get me far on the road to happiness. So the goal of being happy is difficult. Yeah, you can have money, you can have, you know, family, whatever, you know, there's an ideal here that a dog, a family, two, you know, a car, and that's, you'll still be unhappy. And I always say that, you know, I see people who's, you know, human beings are human beings. So sometimes somebody yells at you, or so, even now it can happen. Somebody is jealous, somebody is angry, they finally, eventually, no matter what happens, they'll end up in my operating table or somebody else's operating table. They're patients. So I view everyone as patients now, but not before. Before, I used to think of things as challenges to surmount. And those challenges to surmount changed me. And I'm grateful to each one of those. They were all my teachers. And my teachers come from various sources. Nature is one of my teachers. You look at how the ocean sits, the depth of the ocean in the world, and you look at how humble it is. And there are these little ways. So you can always make a lesson out of that. You look at a river and make a lesson out of that. You know, when I was growing up in Ahmedabad, a book that captured my mind was by Hermann Hesse. It was called Siddhartha. And it was made into a movie later on in India. And one of the Kapoors, I forgot which one, but the tall, handsome guy, not Raj Kapoor, but one of his brothers, the three brothers, was in that movie. And a lady called Simi Gareva. But the essence of that is a man who can make life his teacher and what he sees around him. So, he looks at a river and that becomes his teacher. And I've seen that indeed is true. The circumstances in your life sometimes will pull you down and you say, oh my God, how can this happen to me? That's one approach. You can cry. That's another approach. Or you can say, let me see what I've learned from this and move forward. Now, move forward doesn't mean you lose hope. Hope can never be lost. Hope can never be lost. That's one thing you can't lose. It's like a tattoo you have in your body. It's very difficult to get rid of. So hope is like that. You have hope for something, you cannot lose it. No matter what anyone says, they can tell you, are you crazy? You're doing this. You'll never succeed. Look at all these failures. Look at all these other people. You'll never get to where you want to be. You just look past them. They're also your teachers. And you look at them as your teachers and you say, thank you. But don't lose hope, no matter what happens. Never, 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 never. Remember, hope is your tattoo. And I don't want you to go out and make that a real tattoo. Your family will kill me. But that drives you, that keeps you going. So that's one of the things. Education is not for a living. It's not to make a living. It's for life. The second thing that should be an underlying cause for what you do is that anything you do must be of benefit to humanity. And the saying that I go, just like education, the saying that I look at is help ever and hurt never. Why that is important is we are all sharing a planet. And it is more than just a green planet. It is a planet in which we can only be happy when we realize our interdependence. Nature, by its very nature, is interdependent. You cannot claim independence from other beings, entities in this world. You are connected. You are not only connected, you're dependent on each other. And so this is a fact that we often forget. And that is why helping should be in my world and in my life, that helping someone has been a very, very important part of my life. In fact, some people have remarked that they'll write emails to me. I don't reply because I'm very busy. I'm doing other things. I'm busy helping other people. I don't reply for a long time. They get upset. And then they write to me saying they have a problem. And my reply comes within an hour or two, because nothing is more important than helping someone. The reason that is important is because we find ourselves in a situation in this world, all of us, where we thrive only by the help of others. And this is true of everyone. So imagine a set of people or set of entities. Every part of that set thrives only by the help of every other part. Some point or the other, the beggar will come and need the help of the king, and the king will need the help of the beggar at some point or the other, in some way or the other. And from a social dynamics point of view, you can sit down and think, let me see how this king will need the help of this beggar. But eventually, that will be needed, one way or the other. It is not a offshoot or a corollary of chaos theory. It's not the butterfly effect that you eventually will need the help. I will need the help of someone else I've never even met. But it is something different from that corollary of the butterfly effect. It is a fact of nature that we are interconnected. And so if we do things that don't help others, then we are not helping ourselves. And similarly, if we do things that deliberately hurt others, we eventually will get hurt because of this interconnection in this life. It's not about law of karma. It is in this life. We are interconnected. And so recognizing that and finding teachers is helpful, because when you have a failure, yes, there'll be a period of moping and grieving. There's this author, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who talked about grieving. And there's a period when you do grieve, but that grief will go. And it will go when you start thinking about somebody who will pull you out of that hole. And hope is one of them. Hope stretches out its hand and pulls you out. And the other is people, nature, this world, who you have had interconnections with. Suddenly they'll sprout out of nowhere to help you. So without that help, you can't. I can't sit here and say, oh, I can do anything I want. I can achieve anything I want. Wrong. We're all interdependent. And recognizing that brings a sense of humility, brings a sense of purpose, brings a sense of drive that pushes you on and on and on, no matter what happens with your life and the failures you meet. Einstein remarked that every equation that he writes, every equation has a significance and a purpose to help humanity. If it doesn't, he doesn't look at that beyond a bunch of scribbles. Ramanujan, you think that, well, he's writing all these equations, infinite series, and where is humanity in this? He saw humanity in it. How he, just like Feynman saw the orange as Schrodinger's equation, this guy, Ramanujan, would see in an equation the possibility of helping, the possibility of, for him, he was absolutely positive that it was the divine Mata, Namagiri was the name of the goddess, which is a form of Devi. But that was what she was teaching him. And she gave him ideas. And obviously nobody believed it. They thought he was crazy. The guy didn't have a formal education. He was born where my mother was born, in Kumbakonam in Tamil Nadu. But these are people who find that everything they do has to have a purpose. And that purpose is not self-aggrandizement. It's not becoming rich and great and well-known and famous. It is serving people. And that is my third adage. Love all. Serve all. Why that is important is because in whatever you do, you have to find not only the prospect of helping others and not hurting them, but also to serve them. That brings in you a sense of humility. And it is that humility that makes you think, yeah, maybe I don't know this. Because unless you acknowledge there are things you don't know, you will never be able to discover things that the world doesn't know. To be a discoverer in a journey, the prerequisite is that humility. And so, I have obviously students of mine sometimes have a feeling of, yeah, I know everything. In fact, we have this, in medicine, we have this process where you do, you finish your education, then you do internship, and, then you go through what is called residency for several years. And for me, for example, so to give you examples of each one of these, so education is for life, is the things that I learned all along, I'm still using them. I can never forget what I learned in St. Xavier's High School in Ahmedabad, because we were taught subjects. One of the fathers, Jesuit fathers there, was my hero. If I go to ask him, he taught me science, and if I asked him how does a helicopter work, and I was a kid, and he would tell me, but with such enthusiasm. This guy was an accomplished monk, and he would pretend to be a helicopter and spin around. I still can't forget it. And that enthusiasm rubbed, even with history. Warren Hastings, he would be excited, and I thought, what? Why is this guy excited about history? But yes, he found excitement in history, and that rubbed off. So you never forget, education is for life. Help ever, hurt never. That gave me a lot of energy to do things in the presence of difficulties, in every part of my life. Even now, what I do is admittedly physically taxing. My surgeries are long. They vary from 3-4 hours to 20 hours, 25 hours I've operated. One of the times, I could obviously finish the surgery fast and get out. But at that point, when I'm in the operating room, there's nothing more important than that patient. And if I follow these principles, help ever, hurt never, love also, I'm there sitting, this is my family, this is my life, this is my brother or my sister, or I can't make a shortcut. And the surgeon who thinks, oh, it's fine, and when he encounters a difficulty, every surgeon will encounter difficulty. Never doubt that. And so there's no such thing as, this is just such and such surgery. This is an easy one. No, you will encounter difficulties. The unforeseen will show up. Are you prepared for that? If you're overconfident and you say, you remember that this, like the hare and the tortoise, or Charlie Brown, his sister Lucy always, okay, let's race, and they'll go, and this guy is ahead of the game, and then he says, I'm so good, and he dreams of how great he is, and I'm happy, I'm ahead of, and then suddenly he slows down, and zoom, Lucy goes beside him and overtakes him. So unless that humility is there, you can't help. You can't have the energy to help physically, emotionally. You can't be there to support the family or the patient or the people that you want to serve. So how do you get this energy? I don't know. Physically, there are days, imagine 20 hours, we don't take bathroom breaks. Cannot. I can if I want to, can have somebody come in and cover, but that would not be right for the patient. So loving that patient as if it was your own family is critical. And it may be that that patient may not love you back. So that is the beauty of life, that you do things because you believe that it is a contract, or you're doing it between you and God, or you and Mother Teresa. I was with her for some time. And one of the things she told me was this beautiful poem that she has written about, and you can look at it, you can Google it. It's probably, you should put the keyword of anyway, Mother Teresa. And it's a beautiful poem. You try to do good, people will criticize you, but you do good anyway. You try to work hard and people will put obstacles or barriers. This is the essence of the poem. I'm not saying the exact poem. But you continue doing good anyway. And at the end, she says, in the end, it was never between you and them. It was between you and God anyway. And so I feel that following your curiosity, making sure that education is for life, helping ever with no exceptions, hurting never with no exceptions, loving everyone, and serving everyone with humility are the keys to being able to get in life where you want to be and be happy. Many of my colleagues have achieved goals that I have not, in terms of, fame and fortune. I'm not there, but I am happy, and I find my happiness in helping. So I'll stop here. If there are questions, Rishi, how much time do I have, Rishi? I'm sorry if I exceeded. Okay, half an hour more?
Yes, sir, half an hour more.
Okay, thank you. How would you like to proceed? With questions and direct
now
interaction?
questions will be asked.
Okay.
So it must be very interesting for you to study in the same college Feynman did, and you admired him. Yeah,
Yes.
the one in college Feynman used to teach.
Yes. Yes, he was a wonderful guy, and obviously he was one of the role models in my life. Remember, role models are not just people who like you, love you, and nice guys. They can be your worst enemies. Ravana could be a role model for someone, because those are divine entities. So you can't say Ravana was a role model for Hanuman or Rama. But even the worst of people can be role models. But this was not the worst of people. This was somebody who was an amazing guy. And I remember one evening, when we're young, we do all these crazy things. So, I was driving my car through the campus, trying to live up to a challenge someone gave me about not being able to drive the car. So at an odd hour in the night, I took the car into parts of the campus, such as buildings. And as I was driving, there's a little bridge. Robert Millikan was another alumnus and used to be a professor at Caltech. So there's a library, it was called Millikan Library. And there's a little pond in front of it and a bridge over the pond. And so there was a guy lying in that bridge on his back. So the bridge is curved like this, and he's lying on his back with his hands behind his head, looking at the stars and loudly saying, "Why? Why?" And I just walked by, and it was Feynman. So I just stood there and I said, "Can I share your thoughts?" And the level of humility and curiosity that defined him. And it was very inspiring, because that has sustained me quite a bit. When you move from one field to another, you often think, how can I ever use engineering in medicine? And is there any purpose to this? And so again, remember, I told you that tattoo that we can all have on our bodies, the tattoo called hope. It should be there. Never, never, never lose hope. So you're thinking, my career in engineering is finished. It's done. This is chapter 2 now. No, it's not chapter 2, because what you've learned have built the dendrites in your neuron that will never go. That's part of you. So now figure out how to use it. But you don't figure out how to use it by thinking, I've got to use it. I've got to use it. Let me think of how to do it. I've done that. I've been in that position where I was being silly of, I would think about human interactions in a way that could be defined using Fourier transforms, because I had just freshly come out of engineering, and that's one subject many people love to hate. And so, you think, okay, I know how this works, and so let's see if I can use that to model human interaction. I'm trying to fit engineering into parts of medicine or game theory. That was another field I was working in. But when you find you're forcing yourself to do something, then you're violating those 3 principles. The principle that education is for life, that you have to be curious about something, and that you want to help people, not hurt them. And I'm thinking, how does this, am I curious about this? I'm trying to push a theory into a field. For what reason? How is this going to help ultimately someone's life? And maybe I could have published it, and I did. But my thought at that time was not the publication. And there are many publications I did not do because it didn't matter to me, simply didn't matter. The world can judge me the way they want to, but my feeling is that if it doesn't serve humanity, it doesn't belong in my repertoire. So we all have to look at these efforts that we make as something that follows these principles. And the curiosity was the first one that Feynman introduced. The other thing was honesty, intellectual honesty, and honesty in every other way. And that's very important, very, very important, because you want to be honest because you want to build a certain character inside you. That's why you want to be honest, not because I am being honest because I'll get brownie points, good marks from God, or some moral reason. In fact, we had in high school in Ahmedabad, we used to have one course was called moral science. It was a wonderful course, and I don't know if the Catholic schools probably still have it
Yes,
in
sir.
India.
They still have it.
Do? Oh, okay. Yeah, it stays with me even now. Very, very nice course. But that kind of how you pick up something and drive to do what you do because of a purpose of being honest with yourself. And you say, yeah, I made a mistake, or I should not have done that. And this is true in your life too. You with your spouse or partner, you just have to admit that, yes, I was wrong. And believe me, we are wrong more often than right. Right is by grace of God and by chance. Wrong is by human efforts. We are responsible for the wrong things we do. So when we are humble at that point, we realize that I have to be honest. So getting publications, getting the research grants, doing this, doing that, that game, I played that game and realized that's not who I am. If you follow curiosity, education purpose, helping and loving, it doesn't fit in there. So choose your path very carefully. Don't let people throw you out. There are hundreds of naysayers, not well-meaning people who would say, no, don't do this. From in every part of my life, from the part where, I gave up. So I told you I paid deposit in medical school in Gujarat, in Ahmedabad. There was a college called BJ Medical College. And so I paid my 300 rupees, it was in those days. So I was a registered student, but then the IIT results came and I went to Madras or Chennai. And vacation, semester holidays, I would come to Ahmedabad where my parents were and then go to BJ school. Hey, I'm a genuine student. I paid my fees. So I'd go and sit there and, I could have spent my vacation in some other way. So you're right that Feynman was one of the people who influenced me tremendously. There was another person, and he was originally a physicist as well, and then he was curious about biology, and eventually his Nobel Prize was in physiology and medicine. So people are driven by reasons other than earning a living. You are driven by life, by the recognition of interdependence in our world. That is your legacy, and that will remain even after you're gone. You never know when you will go. We are young and we think age determines when we pass away. I don't think that is the case. And you've all seen now with the coronavirus, young and old are getting hit by it. So death should be our friend. And when we realize that, we can change how we live today. Steve Jobs was the guy who said, I think many of you may have heard this. If you haven't, I would urge you to hear that. He gave commencement, which is a convocation address at Stanford University a few years before he passed away, after he got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And he talks about death. I myself, I'm right now writing a book called Waiting for Death. I'm not a gross guy who's looking at dark things, but in the best teacher in life of all the teachers I've encountered is the possibility of death. When you realize that today may be your last day, you make different decisions. You make decisions that you would not have made otherwise. So the inevitability of death must be understood and recognized. And we can't say that, look, I'm young, I'm healthy. It's not related to your health. I've seen so many patients, young patients, God-fearing, good people, good families dying. And death is a friend. And when I go and talk, I've seen little children, young children, babies I've operated on, infants just born. 3 days after birth, I do surgeries. And if they're 7 years old, 5 years old, 4 years old, with massive brain tumors. And you think, where is justice in this? And you realize that the inevitability of death, when it stares at your face, there's nothing you can do. You're impotent. Remember that when you feel proud of what you've done. That there is something that can, like a samurai with a sword, can chop off your head anytime. And so in this book, Waiting for Death, what I look at is I interviewed about 100 of my patients who have all been diagnosed with cancer, some of the most devastating brain tumors, and with a diagnosis that gives them life for such and such time, 1 year, 2 years, 9 months, 6 months. Death is almost inevitable for them. How do they live? How does their family live knowing that? How do they change their lives? That's very important. I don't know if you probably may know about the story of Parikshit. Parikshit is a guy who knew that in 7 days, this is from from Hindu literature, he knew that in 7 days he's going to die. That was part of the curse, or the way his life would go. And he spent those 7 days in a way that he would not have spent if he didn't know that he was going to die in 7 days. So how close we are, but yet we don't realize it. Death is invincible and invisible. We don't see it. So live your life in a way that helps others. Live your life in a way that serves others. And most importantly, live it without failing to achieve your goals. No one can stop you from achieving your goals except your mind. Any goal. Your mind is the only one that can stop you. That's the way Feynman used to think. So, sorry, does that answer the question?
Yes, sir. So we have questions here, sir.
Yes.
So the first question is, how long should we explore different fields if we have a diverse interest? And when should we start focusing on a particular thing?
You know, the answer to both is the same. One word: always. So the first part of your question, how long should we keep exploring other fields? Answer is always. And I think that's important because you find these interconnections only when you're like that. When you see, think about, let me give you an example. So there is a problem in game theory where you look at how, okay, so Rushiraj, you're sitting in front of, I can call you Rushi, right? Is that okay?
Yes, sir, no problem, sir.
So you're sitting in front of me, and I'm thinking, what are you thinking about me? Okay, so then I come up with some theories. There's a little probability distribution of various things. This guy is a jerk, to this guy is somebody I like. Okay, so you're thinking there's a probability distribution. Okay, and that, so now what I think of what you're thinking of me is going to affect how I behave and how I interact with you, right?
Yeah.
Now, what you are thinking of me, that probability distribution is not independent of what you think I think of you. So if you think that I think you're going to rip me off, you're going to cheat me right now, then how you think of me will change. Versus if you think of, so my thought about you will change depending upon how I think you think of me. And how I think you think of me is going to change how you think of me. And so this goes on and on and on. How do people interact? So this problem arose in a context of, Israel has these valleys and hills and desert. And so imagine a situation where there are two armies on the top of two hills, and there's a valley in which the enemy is sitting. And so the general on top of one hill is thinking, let me go and attack this valley guy, the guy who's sitting in the valley. But if I attack him alone, I'm going to be defeated. Both people have to attack. They have to come at the same time and attack. And we don't have cell phones. There's no way to communicate this to the other person. I want to attack at 5 a.m. in the morning when those guys are sleeping. But I can't do it alone. I want the other guy to come down with me. So how do I send him a message? So he calls a little messenger and says, run down the hill, through the valley, go up to the other side and tell the general I'm going to attack at 5 a.m. I need him to come. So the messenger says, sure. Now there is a probability, a non-zero probability, this messenger is going to get his head chopped off as he goes through the valley. So this general at the top of this side of the hill says, okay, the messenger goes down, goes through the valley, and comes to the other side, makes it to the other side, and he says, General, my general on the other hill is going to attack at 5 a.m. Will you help him? And he says, oh, sure, no problem. I'll come at 5 a.m. and the two of us can demolish the guys in the valley. So now, can the general over here go down at 5 a.m.? No, because he doesn't know if his messenger made it to the other side. Maybe the messenger got killed in the valley. It's a non-zero probability of that happening. So this guy doesn't know what to do. Says, God, I wish that messenger would come back and say, okay, I delivered the news and he's fine at 5 a.m. So he tells the messenger before he sends him, he says, okay, go deliver the message, come back to me and tell me that you delivered the message. So the messenger goes all the way, delivers the message. That general says, sure, I'll attack at 5 a.m. Then he comes down to, again, there's a non-zero probability he'll get. Comes back to the hill and tells this guy, I made it. I told him, he said, okay, and now 5 a.m. Now the other general is thinking, did this guy really make it to the other side? Maybe he got killed in the valley. And maybe my message that I agreed to go at 5 a.m. didn't reach the other general. And therefore, he's not going to come down and attack. I'll be alone. I'll get demolished. So then, what should he have done? He should have told the messenger, okay, you go there, tell the general that I agreed, and then come back to me and tell me that you told him, right? So this process of recursive thinking need to be sorted out. Where does it end? And how do we think about these problems? So the first part of your question, and the answer is always, is because this guy, a guy called Robert Aumann, said, I think this can be solved through a process of recursive functions. Let us see how we can model recursive functions. And he went ahead and did that. And eventually, he got a Nobel Prize in economics. How we are constantly thinking, the more I imbibe, the more I learn and study and do things because of my curiosity, the more I'm equipped. And you will never fail. You will be a very valuable commodity. It's something that will never leave you. It will never be a waste. So acquire knowledge. Keep thinking, what else can I do? What else can I do? Ramakrishna Paramahamsa used to keep saying that constantly you should be thinking, what's next? What's next? What's next? And the way you think about that will keep you afloat in the world where you can drown easily. Because then I can grab this. What would you do if you were drowning? If you're drowning, you won't say, okay, there's one thing I can grab hold of, one piece of wood. I don't know how to swim. I'll grab one piece of wood And no, you won't do that. You're splashing, you're searching for support, you're holding this, trying that until you die or somebody finds you. So we don't give up. And so keep on looking at, the reason you look at other things is because that makes your thinking broader, that makes you apply one field to another. And these fields are all applicable. They make you innovate in ways that, like I said, Feynman's orange. You innovate and your thinking is different. This is Steve Jobs' think different. How do you think different? You think different by thinking about possibilities that many people may not think about. You think about other fields and say, oh man, it applied there it worked. What if I use that model here? That is thinking different. Thinking outside the box is exactly that. A box is where you're trapped. Outside the box means you go and say, well, there it worked. In any field, right? In biology, we do this, or in social psychology, we do this. In history, this was done. Maybe, Aurangzeb should have done something different. And you say, yeah, let me see if I can apply that here. So your thinking should travel. It should travel. Your mind can travel. So you never stop exploring other fields. Keep exploring other fields. Okay. So now the second question was, the second was about, what was it, Rishi? It was about, when do I stop exploring? And the second one?
When do I start focusing on a particular thing?
Okay. So always. Why? Because when you explore other fields, the exploration can be either rudimentary, can be nebulous, you just go all around the place and you just touch the surface of it, or you go deep into it. If you choose to explore a field, go deep into it, because you'll find beauty only in depth. Beauty is never in the surface. That beauty which is on the surface is evanescent. It will go. So beauty is always in the depth. That's why we say, scratch the surface and look inside. Evanescent beauty is not nature. That's man-made. But deep beauty, that's nature. So look, find that beauty. It's wonderful when you do that. So focus. Now, that's when you will realize, as you focus in another field, that, hey, I can make that application over here. That thought comes, and that suddenly, it's an epiphany that comes because you're saying, I want to borrow that idea over here. In the field that you're in, always focus. Never be in a field. Even if it's a field that you don't like and somehow you're trapped, do your best. So that focus should always be there. So focus here and focus there, right? You're doing everything, all the focus. You have the energy to do it if you're driven by help, by the need to help others, by the need to love others, by the need to find education that will stay with you for life, and by your innate curiosity. That is the energy. That's your food. Those are the elements of nature that give you food, not the physical food. There are times when I haven't eaten for long periods, for a day or two, because I finish a 20-hour surgery and then in the morning I have to round on my patients and then go on for the next day's surgery, and goes on. But where does this energy come from? Not from food, but it comes from these things that you do. So focus all the time. Whatever you choose to do, even the smallest job, focus. And I find that difference remarkable. I used to work in a few countries, but one of the countries that inspired me was Germany. And there you see this guy building a road, an ordinary person building a road, but every brick is his life. It looks like that. The guy will lay it beautifully, stand up, look at, man, you got this big road to build. Come on, get moving. That's the way I feel, like telling him. But then I stood there and watched him with the love he showed and the attention to details, and the focus was incredible. So I know at that point that the training he gets in focusing is going to build these dendrites I talked about. So every neuron connects and talks to another neuron through dendrites, and there's plasticity of the brain. So he's grown up with these connections in his brain. And that search for perfection, that search for wanting to do the best, is going to stay with him for his life. That defines him. that defines his creation. Imagine if Michelangelo wasn't focused. He would say, this statue didn't work out. Next, and he goes to the next statue. No, he stood there and he said, I had a vision. I saw the statue in the rock, and all I'm doing is taking out the surplus rock that is covering this beautiful statue. And if somebody comes and tells him, this doesn't look like the statue, it's not beautiful to me, he'll say, yeah, it's not beautiful to you, it's beautiful to me, because I'm seeing inside, I'm seeing in depth. That is the focus. And that builds in you the capacity to continue focusing. Now, some people may say, you're not multitasking, it is not good. Well, if you want to multitask, my own recommendation always is multitask with focus in each task. Multitasking is not a feat. It's not, yes, I'm a multitasker. It's not a feat. Focusing is a feat. That is difficult. Meditation is difficult because you want to focus. Same thing. So when I'm doing surgery, for example, most of the time inside the brain when I'm doing surgery, I'm working under a microscope. And I rarely take my eyes off the microscope for hours. I'm looking just at the microscope. And all I do is my hand reaches out for things. Even if I speak, my movements of my lip can change what I'm looking at. And within a couple of millimeters, I could make the patient permanently disabled. So focus because you're loving the patient. Focus because you're loving what you're doing. But focus, focus, focus. So that should be always part of everything you do. And then the product that comes out, you don't ask the question, will anybody notice what I've done? With so much focus and dedication, you build something. Will anybody realize that I've put in so much effort? Maybe not. But there is one person who will know that you focused. You. And when you look at it, when you look at the product, when you look at the research paper, when you look at the final thing that comes out of it, you'll say to yourself, wow, how did that happen? And it is a combination of all these things that made it happen. So yes, do focus, because then it builds in you this urgency to focus and the ability to focus. When, again, in the example of medicine, when somebody comes in, trauma patient comes in, right? So this patient has had an accident and he's wheeled into the trauma room, and there is a very systematic way of dealing with this patient. You have to make sure that his airway is intact first. You have to make sure then, after you make sure the airway is intact. So there's an algorithm, and the algorithm needs to be followed, that the person can breathe. Then you remove all the obstacles to breathing, and then you say, is his heart okay? Is his blood pressure okay? Is the circulation of blood okay? Now, when I start looking at the first part, patient comes in and everybody's shouting, everybody, patient's family is yelling. It's like chaos. And that's when you retreat into this beautiful sanctuary that nobody else can share with you. That sanctuary is your mind, a focused mind. And in that focused mind you go, all the noises blur out. They're gone. And you know exactly what you're doing. And that focus can save a life. And if you don't have that focus, you can lose the life. And it's so easy, because I'm trying to make sure that the person's airway is clear. And somebody's shouting, the blood pressure is dropping, the blood pressure is such and such and such and such and such and such, and it's getting less and less. If I'm not focused, I'm thinking, oh my God, blood pressure is dropping. Okay, let's do something about the blood pressure. No, it's a clear algorithm. A, B, C, airway, breathing, circulation, so on and so forth. So you form a way in your mind to focus, and that ability to focus will stay with you. So yeah, always.
So that was a great insight, sir. So another question I wanted to ask, that Can you tell me some biggest failures that made your life miserable and the learnings out of it?
Let's see. Good question. I have failed. The reason I'm taking time to think is not because I'm Superman. Nobody is. We have failed. I've failed many, many times. But I always go above it, over it, and continue, keep pushing. So it's hard to remember. They teach me, and I go with the lesson rather than failure. But let me think. There are subjects that I never liked. Okay, so when I was in engineering school, I was an electrical engineer, and engineering drawing, for example, was something that never appealed to me. But it was a course, I had to take it, and I didn't do well in that course. And in fact, oh God, I hope my professors are not listening to it. But there was one time when we had to draw, that was, a jig trolley. And, in engineering drawing, again, those days we all had this big board we're carrying, and I had no idea what a jig trolley was. No idea. And neither did anyone else in the class. So we're all sitting there. The examiner is standing there. Nobody is doing anything. We're all just sitting, looking at each other, not knowing what on earth is a jig trolley. And we're supposed to draw it. So this waiting game goes on until eventually somebody needs to go to the bathroom. And so that person says, and we're all honest guys, and my classmates are just amazing guys in life, what they have achieved. And so the person goes to the bathroom, comes back, sits down and starts drawing. We're all looking at what happened. I went to the bathroom, came back and started drawing. Not that he's cheating, he doesn't have any books or anything. So another person says, can I go to the bathroom? So the examiner says, yeah, go. This guy goes, comes back, sits down and starts drawing. And you're thinking, what? How did this happen? So slowly people start going to the bathroom. I also went to the bathroom. And on the way from the classroom to the bathroom, in the building, there's a big iron bar, and there is a crane-looking thing with chain, and it says jig trolley. Right there. Oh, this is a jig trolley. And I skipped the bathroom, came back in, and started drawing. So I didn't do well in that course, and I did fail. But eventually I did okay, I passed. But I think it taught me a lesson about what do you do in life with things you don't like? Do you throw it out, or do you learn something from it? So the things that I didn't like, if I threw it out, it's like you want to eat. You want to eat some kind of food, and there is curry leaves, I put it aside. Or do I eat it? I think you should eat it. Why? Because there is something to be gained from every experience in life. And so failures will make you sometimes feel, woe is me, I'm terrible. It just will not work out. In careers, that can happen many, many times. And none of the changes that I made in my career are because I failed in one career. It was because of a combination of those things. Curiosity. From engineering, when I went into economics, my goal really was to do something about income inequality in India. We had, the rich were very rich and the poor were very poor. Right outside our campus, engineering school campus, we had people who were sitting there not having had a meal or even water to drink for days. And I would try to simulate that to see how it feels not to eat or drink for days. But that's just not right. There's something that we have done, that humanity has done, that has caused this. And what is it that we do? What did we do, or what did we not do? We have to find a solution to this. And I set out to find that solution. That's why I went to economics. So it's not that I failed in engineering. In fact, my first job was in HCL, Hindustan Computers. But I left right, again, this was like the medical school and IIT. I left, my semester here started in August. I left India in August. But I think, and July was our graduation, so barely a week or two was when I worked. But I apply the principles of engineering very much, even now. One of the things for which I have a patent is a way by which we can control machines using thought. And I'm not crazy. So, our brain emits these waves, electroencephalogram. And so you can try, and you can put contacts on the surface of your head, on your skin, and you can use the data from those contacts to try and reconstruct a 3D map of the brain using fast Fourier transforms. And that will help identify where these signals are coming from. So if I think of turning left, that signal can be communicated to a machine, and that will make the appropriate movement. So now, is it going to help anyone? Yes. People who have had strokes, people who are paralyzed on one side, or people who can't speak, they just have to think about. People who want to use a computer who don't have arms or are paralyzed and can't move their arms can think what they're going to type. Not by eye movements like Stephen Hawking had. It's just by thought. And so the next generation of human-computer interface, in my opinion, will be that. Will be by thought. It's not by mouse. It used to be typewriter. Then we went to mouse, various kinds of trackpads, and eventually, when this is finessed and prototypes are done, everything, we'll be able to talk in the next 20 years. We'll be able to communicate with machines by thought. We can fly airplanes, and that's much faster thought than by thought telling the hand what to do and the hand turning the airplane. You just think, yes, I should turn left or right, and it'll turn left or right. So applications of engineering and neuroscience could not have happened unless I'm constantly thinking, what's next, what's next, what's next? How can I apply one to the other? Now, then I want to go and communicate this to others. I can't just have an idea and stay with it. I have to communicate. So I have to go to someone and say, hey, this is an idea I have. Let's try and build a prototype. He says, okay, show me what you have. Uh-oh, I have to do drawing. The subject that I failed in, that I didn't like. So unless I do that drawing, I can't communicate to someone else. So things that were threatening you before in your life, they all have a purpose. It's like a toolbox, and you grab this tool and grab this tool and grab this tool, and you walk around like little Red Riding Hood grabbed apples and flowers. You grab all these tools, and as you grab a tool, you may get cut, you may get hurt, but you grab it. You'll use it later on. You don't know when, how, but nothing goes to waste. So yes, to answer your question, there were failures, but eventually you intermingle, you find the interconnections among all your experiences in life. This is in career. In personal life, tremendous difficulties. Tremendous, because I was so busy, honestly, and I want to be honest, I was so busy helping others, I lost track of my own family. And that is a tremendous pain that I carry with me. But I think we all have these failures that can stay with us to make us different, to make us go in a different direction, and to make us hopefully people who can serve humanity with even more vigor and energy. But don't lose track of your family.
So we are open to questions. Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
So you talked about happiness earlier, and today we see the rise of capitalism and capitalist world. So if we choose to even do what drives us, so most of us might agree or not, but like we keep monetary thing as a prime thing. So are we heading towards right direction?
I would not think so, because money comes and goes, and if we evaluate ourselves with the yardstick of that money, we will also go up and down in life. When your money goes down, you will go down. When money goes up, you'll go up. And both these will hurt you. Why? Because money goes up, that honesty and humility will go. Money goes down, your hope will go. So remember what I said in the beginning, neither should hope leave you, and always should humility and honesty stay with you. And so you will do exactly the opposite. So find goals that don't make you lose these important qualities. I believe in capitalism. In fact, the predominant economic theory of microeconomics is the competitive markets are most efficient. That's another Nobel Prize that went to a guy called Arrow, Kenneth Arrow. And along with Arrow was Amartya Sen. And Amartya Sen and Arrow were people who showed us the importance of competitive markets. That's the basis and foundation of capitalism. So those are efficient. But can we have purely competitive markets? Do they exist? And the answer to that is no. We found later that that's not possible, because there are things, for example, called externalities. That is, say, a company that produces something, part of competitive markets. In the market, it produces a glass bottles, say, for example, it's producing that. But in order to produce that, it has to pollute the air that we all breathe, or it has to put poisonous effluent into nearby river or soil. And we all consume that. But the company doesn't care about it. If you breathe its poison, how does it care? It produces, it sells, and it makes its profit. That's its goal. So pure competitive markets do have problems. And these problems arise from a term that's called externality. Or take the issue of a park, a public park that is for all of us to enjoy. One guy goes there, enjoys, and messes up the park, right? He says, I don't care, I finished enjoying the park, and he walks away. But the next guy who comes there is stepping on some junk in the grass, or he doesn't see the flower because the previous guy picked the flower and walked away. So the guy who was there before doesn't feel the cost of what he's doing. The polluter is not experiencing the cost of pollution. So in competitive markets, you can do things where the cost is not internalized. And that's why it's called an externality. And you have to get around this. And the only way to get around this, a solution, is to tax. I will tax this company based on how much effluent it is putting out or how much it's polluting. And that is exactly what people did to correct this process of this problem in reality, in real life. In theory, competitive markets are the best, they're efficient. But here, in reality, it's not, because our incentives don't match. That model of competitive markets is hurting someone. And same thing with the guy who plucked the flower and left the next guy without a flower. We have to do something about it. So non-competitive behavior emerges. And that is part of that's not 100% capitalism. So in the case of externalities and dealing with it, we will be doing something that is taxing, government will come in and tax this company, and that creates a problem. People say, hey, why is government? We are competitive markets. Pure capitalism, that government shouldn't have a role. Ultimately, government needs to have a role. Same thing with army. Who's going to fund the army? I am enjoying the benefits of army, and if you come tomorrow to me, hey, give me a donation to support this army, I'll say, yeah, somebody else will give the donation. So how do we internalize this kind of ways by which we hurt others? So we try to say, like Swachh Bharat, right? So we try to develop a sense of civility, civil behavior, and say, it's your country, care for it, right? But, or some other countries will say, I'll put you in jail. In Singapore, it can happen. There are cameras watching you on the street. And being afraid of that, you don't litter on the street. And we are trying to do it in a nice way by saying Swachh Bharat, we're trying to build a sense of values and consciousness in us. So pure capitalism does have its problems. So therefore, do I want to be part of that? No, I don't want to be part of pure capitalism. But does that mean I'm a communist? No. Does that mean I'm a dictator? No. And that's exactly what Amartya Sen talked about. That we are living in a society and we should care for the society we live in, because eventually, as I said in the beginning, it's not just the butterfly effect of chaos theory. It is the fact, irrefutable fact, that we are interconnected. And if we don't recognize that interconnection, it's to our loss or the loss of our children. Better build that value in yourself and that value into others. Again, go back to the other principle I mentioned. What would you do if you are going to die tomorrow? If I, as a physician, come to you and tell you, I'm so sorry, you're going to die tomorrow. You have about a day to live. Are you going to think about how much money you'll make? What purpose is that? Right? Guru Gobind Singh, somebody asked him, how much money do you have? And he said, whatever amount I spend is the money I have. I never understood that answer until a few years ago. What it means is that what you leave behind is of no use to you. You're gone, you're dead, you're you're done. If you're done and it doesn't matter to you, what are you doing pursuing something that is irrelevant, inconsequential to you? So, Alexander the Great, when he died, and you know about the story that, after his death, they opened his hand and they found a gold coin in there. And why was it there? Because he's sending a clear message. Look, after death, this is of no use. It doesn't come with me. The gold coin is irrelevant. So what remains is how you help others, how you love others. You leave a legacy behind that can help others, right? Pay it forward. That's the idea of life. So yes, everybody says, oh, we have to get the money, and they start praising, oh, so-and-so made so much money. And step back and think that's not so important. Many, many, many of my classmates have done amazingly well in life. Multi-millionaires, retired early. I still work. I'm nowhere near where my colleagues are. But in a way, I found happiness, or a way by which I can help people and love people, because that's who we are. We are nothing more than that love within us. And if we try to be something else, we will fail. We will not be happy, and we will die unhappy. And remember that book, Waiting for Death. Is that how you want to die? So to some extent, to answer your question, yes, money, pursuit of money, but no, that's not the goal. Money will come. Don't worry. If you have the right goals, money will come. The money that you need will come. So I would urge you not to get into the competition with your colleagues and peers to be able to do better than them monetarily, do better than them instead in helping others, in finding this interconnection, which is so beautiful. We are each of us interconnected. And in that interconnection is a beauty you will see that you can find nowhere else. Find that beauty. Let that be a goal, not the money that you make. Money will come. Yeah, go ahead.
Amazing, sir. Awesome. Thank you.
Kushila, can I ask the last question?
Oh, sorry, your voice cut off.
Hello. Am I audible, sir?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. Sir, yeah, after a great talk, I would like to ask one question that what books you would like to recommend, mostly in non-fiction genre, so that we can understand and sir, grasp a 360-degree or a holistic approach about an issue. For example, I would say usually we come across this term that water is very scarce in this world, but if we look at the global perspective, the problems due to the wastewater are more than the problems due to the water scarcity. It means that if you have 100 liters of water and one problem, then this 100 liters of pure water, when it becomes wastewater, it creates 4 times to 5 times problem. Actually,
Sorry, your
water
voice is
scarce,
cutting off.
but if we
Sorry,
usually the
sorry,
world
Fateh. Can you repeat that, Fateh? The second part, your voice cut off.
Yeah, yes, sir. For example, the water scarcity has caused lesser problems than wastewater. Okay, sir. Like if water scarcity has caused 100 problems, the wastewater management has caused more than that, 3 to 4 times of that. So I have, as I see to it, I feel like we have not, sir, have this ability right now to understand the topic from holistic point of view. We are just looking at one point and one part of it. And to understand this thing and look from a holistic perspective, what books would you like to suggest so that we can understand any topic in, sir, multidimensionally? I hope you got my question, sir.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In Indian, not mythology, scripture, there is you all know about Upanishads, and that usually comes at the end of the Vedas, of each Veda. So it's called Vedanta at the end of the Veda. But one of the Upanishads, there are also stories that are written by various people. So there is this guy. He's the son of a sage, and the sage is very wise. It's Sage Vyasa, very, very wise guy, and he has a son, Shuka. And the son says, "Dad, I want to learn about something, having learned which I don't need to learn anything else. Can you tell me what that is?" And so Dad says, "Son, I think you should go and meet this other king, King Janaka. You go meet that king and he'll give you the answer to it." So this son goes, and so eventually he finds that, to make the long story short, his name is Shuka, the son. So what he finds is that knowing something and having acquired that knowledge, you don't need to know anything else, is the same as figuring out what is it that you should not spend time knowing. There are things that you need to discard. Don't waste time thinking about it. And there are things that you need to know so that you can find solutions. So solutions to what? Solutions to problems. And what are problems? Problems are those that violate an equilibrium that exists in our planet. The equilibrium comes about because of our interdependency. One example I gave you is pollution. So the guy who pollutes the air while producing something useful, like the car producer. So, Chrysler or Ford or somebody who produces a car is people can drive and people can get from point A to point B easier. But hey, in producing that car, you're polluting the air. And the car is drinking gasoline and burning it and polluting the air again. And that's going to cause cancers and the greenhouse effect and so on. So there's all these effects that go on. And if you don't recognize that interdependency, that which you think is of benefit is not of benefit to the world, but of benefit to you. So how can you be in a state of the world where you cannot increase the benefit to anyone without hurting someone else? So if I want more of this commodity, it can only come at the loss of that to someone else or causing harm to someone else. That is not good. Society would not be better off by allowing somebody to enhance themselves at the cost to someone else. As a whole, as a society, we will not benefit. So this is a concept called Pareto optimal. That means it's a state of the world where an individual cannot enhance themselves any further without hurting someone else, right? We don't want that to happen. We want to be in a state where we're all happy and that's the state, which is Pareto optimal. That means somebody increases their well-being, somebody else's well-being will go down. So this situation of water is an example of that. It's an example where the water, the wastewater that we produce has the impact of causing a lot more harm than the benefit that can come to us from consumption of water, good water, using it in one way or the other. One of the reasons for that is the long-term effect. Just like the pollution of air has a long-term effect. The long-term effect is the cancers that we can get or the way we can destroy the planet Earth. Planet Earth is eventually it will be destroyed. This is like death, right? It's going to happen. Our sun will expand. You know all about how a star behaves, the evolution of a star. So eventually the sun will expand, will get bigger, the radius will get bigger, Earth will get hotter. All that is going to happen, but we're talking about billions of years later, but it's happening. But before that, we are going to destroy the Earth, human beings, because we don't recognize this interdependence I talked about in the beginning. So when water is polluted, or we use substances that pollute water, like the factory that puts effluents into water, or we ourselves have various reasons by which wastewater accrues. Wastewater is not just waste products in the water, but things that we use, farmers use pesticides, and the pesticides goes into groundwater, and groundwater, which is supposed to be not wastewater, now becomes wastewater. So wastewater is not just that which results from our consumption of good water, but it is that which we are creating without even consuming. That is the characteristic that needs to change. The impact of wastewater that you talked about, Fateh, is because why it is bigger than the problem with good water is because we are creating wastewater without even consuming good water. So it's not like the exhaust that a car, if you look at a IC engine, internal combustion engine, its efficiency tells you input over output ratio. So there's something that's bad that comes out, but hey, there's also something good that happens. It makes the engine go. But here it's not like that. You're just creating bad without any good. If I throw pesticides on my plants and that goes down through the soil into earth, that is killing what's under the earth. In Canada, northern Canada, they have this humongous area called tar sands. Sand in which there is oil, just on the surface. You don't have to dig deep to go to and get oil. It's right on the surface, because that part of earth was many hundreds of years ago, not hundreds, thousands, millions of years ago, underwater. So you had various kinds of life that lived there, and then the water receded, and then there were dinosaurs, and all these things died. And so you have material, carbon-based material, that can produce oil. And this oil is sitting right on the surface in sand. So they found a way by which you can grab this sand and purify it so that you can produce oil that is consumable by us. But in that process, there is an effluent. There is something that comes out of that factory. And that accumulates in large ponds. And these ponds are now so large that you can see it from a geostationary satellite. And we don't realize the harm that it can do, because that will sink into Earth. And eventually, the entire water table in that region and way beyond that region will be affected. So when we are creating wastewater without consuming good water, that is the source of the problem. And that's where we need to attack it. Wastewater that comes out from the use of good water, we can try and deal with it. Taxation, these things I talked about, which is externalities, we can use that to deal with it. Tax good water, we'll be more careful with how we use good water. And the amount of water and wastewater, people who refine and clean wastewater for drinking and for using other purposes, that will sprout up if there is a market for it. And free markets will take care of that. But when you start polluting and killing water without even consuming, hey, there's a problem. So that's what makes it a bigger problem than the other one, as you correctly pointed out. So does that answer the question, Fateh?
Yes, sir, sure. With that, I asked for any suggestions of the book still, if you want to give, to use it as a tool to, sir, understand any problem. That was my another question. For example, currently I purchased one book named Quantum Doctor, if you have heard about, by Deepak.
No, I haven't. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. It is regarding how the quantum mechanics and quantum physics have changed the way how we look at the biology and everything. So it is not to understand deeper about biology, rather it taught me how to understand the problem from 360 point of view and not making any beliefs about that. Just say I have explored this much and rest I don't know, rather than putting under any beliefs. Correct. So that is how I developed this mechanism to look at a problem. So would you like to suggest any book that would help similarly?
Yeah, so first about this book. I do know of him very well. In fact, he was one of the people who got an award from our Society for the Therapeutics and Brain Mapping, of which I was a part. Now, this the approach of mixing various ideas and concepts, as you very correctly pointed out, can be taken only so far. And that means you say, maybe physics can help me understand how the human brain thinks, or physics or chemistry does have a role. Neurotransmitters are there that has a role in how you think and behave. But you can bring in quantum physics. You can bring in various other things. You can even bring physics into spirituality and so on. But always know its limitations, as you correctly pointed out. That is, you can only go so far, because when you try to do it too much, sometimes you can be misled. So are there other books? I have to think back in time, Fateh, because I have been so busy that I have not read a book for a long time, I haven't even watched a movie for a long time. So there's another part of the world I need to explore. I have to calm down in life and do things. But I don't find I really don't, even when if I don't have free time, because if there is free time, there's a problem. That means I'm not doing enough for the world. So even when I'm now I can't travel, I just sit here, but still I'm able to do things where, whether it's online or whether it is, there are people in Africa that have been hit so hard by COVID, where they don't have food. And this it's called, now we don't call it starvation. The United Nations has called it food insecurity. And it is so severe. There are children, they're eating mud and sand because they just can't feed themselves. So I'm trying to find ways by which we can provide that for them. So I have to be honest with you. I'm not able to think off the top of my head of a book that I can recommend, because I didn't have time to read. Sorry. So if I'm doing something, if I'm traveling, then I talk with people about what can be done, and I'm planning the next thing that I can do after the plane lands. So I haven't taken time to do that. Maybe that's a part of my life I should explore. Take some time to smell the roses. So sorry, I can't.
Yes, sir, we completely understand.
So, sir is with us for like an 1.4, almost 2 hours now. So he has talked about so many things about the learnings, about the humbleness, about the things that we should help others to get ourselves, to get the best out of ourselves, and telling us all the experiences, all the little things that you saw and learned from them. Like that inspired me so much that I almost forgot to letting people in on the meeting. So people were DM me, let me in, I want to hear. So because of the time constraint, and because sir woke up early to talk to us today, and it's early morning there in US. So sir, thank you so much for coming and sharing
welcome.
all your experiences and the mesmerizing stuffs you said. So whoever have any questions, they can send it to us, then we would ask to sir. So thank you so much,
Certainly,
sir.
yeah. Thank Rushiraj, you and the team in CEV and all of you guys are dear to me. And the reason is, find for yourself a path that will probably be different from others. And we go back to Robert Frost, that a path in which there could be thorns, that is less traveled, but find a path that will help this world. That should be the goal. Help people, that should be the goal. And remember those principles of curiosity, education for life, helping always, hurting never, loving always, loving all, even your enemies. They can be your teachers too. And serving, be attitude of servitude. So thank you so much. And I love you guys.
Thank you so much, sir, for coming.
You're
As much
Thank you
as
so
we
much, sir.
all want this talk to continue, but yeah.
Okay. So,
So we would love to interact with you again soon. We are CV. We would love to have you again. And yeah.
hopefully I'll come to Surat during mango season. Then,
Oh, sure, sir. We'll love to have
that's
you.
an incentive for
We
me.
would love to meet you there.
Yeah.
We'll bring you kesar keris.
Oh, I
That
would
must be
love
your
that.
favorite.
Yes. Well, Apus, then second case.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
sir. Thank you so much, everyone.
You're welcome.
For joining.
Bye-bye. And my
Bye,
best
sir.
wishes to all of you.
Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in. Not only for us, it was great for everyone, I think so. And with that, we conclude Lumières 2.0, but we still have another event to go. We are collaborating with the Vice Clappers, and after this insightful week, this Wisdom Week, we are going to have a fun session there. So, Ruchiraj, if you could just share the Zoom link there, we will be starting in a bit. Take some rest, have a bite, come back. We will be having a fun interactive quiz, games, and roast session there as well. So, if you can, please do join in. We will be also going live on Instagram at The Vice Clappers.